Thank you, thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Ahmed Abukhater, and I'm here to talk about, as Claudio mentioned, how large organizations try to implement functional excellence for product managers and be successful in implementing it, not just as a function, but a real competitive differentiator and a differentiator in terms of competitive analysis and getting to the market and getting to the customer with the right value definition, value creation, value delivery, and value communication as well. So we'll get started with this very well-known saying: the enemy of the great is the good. Or in a lot of organizations, is the good enough? It's really the shiny object syndrome. Is it good enough? Great, let's get it done, right? And what happens when you do that is you get into the habit of what we call the treadmill product management instead of the impactful product management. You're running, getting nowhere because you're creating something that the customer doesn't need, or you're missing out on a larger opportunity because you're tying your resources and your money, your investment, in the good. And it's really, really interesting and counterintuitive for humans to say no to good ideas. We're trained to say yes. Yeah, it's a good idea, yes. We need to train ourselves to say no to good ideas so we can get great things accomplished. And so this is really the opportunity that we're trying to do. Instead of shooting at everything that moves, we need to be very focused, right? So a lot of organizations today have similar issues, as you can see here. You're very familiar with it. Speed to market with existing and new products, lack of consistent definitions of roles and responsibilities, and we'll talk about this in a second, and lack of a single point of life cycle accountability. If something went wrong, who do we talk to? Who's responsible for what in terms of the product life cycle? And in other words, if we are not doing these things, in other words, it's really lack of disciplined product management, which means the best practices are not consistently applied throughout the organization, and enterprise portfolio management is not deployed actively. So when do we really make the decision to build a product? Anyone? In other words, someone was talking about validating early and often with the customers. What do we validate with the customers? What conditions do we validate against? Anyone can shout out. Do we validate the, yes? Exactly. The problem is one of it, right? Is it urgent? Is the problem urgent? As in, the customer needs it today, not later. Excellent. 2, is the challenge pervasive? As in, it's not just one single customer. It's not an anomaly to one customer. It is representative of a larger market opportunity that we can commercialize and monetize. And the 3rd one is validation of the solution. Is the customer willing to pay for it? There are a lot of innovations that are great ideas, but they're hard to monetize because the customer is not willing to pay for it, right? And then what do we do if all these conditions exist? So we start building? Of course not. We need to think about, as product managers, do we build, do we partner, do we white label, do we buy that technology, depending on what we're trying to accomplish, the type of the market, type of the challenge, the speed that it needs to be happening, right? So we need to be agile at the same time because it's called a market window. That's really, really the key word, market window. The customer sometimes, when some organization come back to the customer with real solid solution, it's already 18 months, right? The customer who requested that requirement or that feature or that solution may not even recognize it. They already moved on. They wouldn't even believe it. Like, I did that? I actually requested this? I already resolved it. I have other issues today. So we really need to be very nimble and very agile. And someone was talking about being agile or doing agile. Right? They're very different things. So, in my mind, all of this comes down to the 3, what I call the 3 unholy trinity: the strategy, the execution, and the process. Yeah? So I would equate a lot of organizations today and the way they're doing business is that they're this pendulum swinging between not fully baked strategy, right, with not very consistent and suboptimal execution, and not consistent process and process integration and implementation. And what we need is really better strategic alignment. We need disciplined and consistent execution, as well as process integration, right, to be able to get that. And the survey yesterday actually showed some people and some organization using multiple processes. Some people use a SAFe or scaled agile. Some use pragmatic marketing, pivotal, strong form product management, you name them. And when you have large organizations that are so set in the way they're doing business, it is hard to integrate these things, but it is possible. And we'll show you how we did it. We also mapped out product management functional excellence journey, where we are today versus where we want to be in the future. And our plan is to move from the ad hoc implementation to functional excellence, functional discipline, functional performance, and eventually functional excellence. And really by highlighting the value to who? To the customer and to the business, remember, right? And what we found out in a lot of organizations is that there are pockets of excellence of implementation of product management best practices. But those pockets of excellence are not extrapolated consistently across the entire organization. So it's not working well. So it's an ad hoc implementation, okay? So ideally, when we get to the point where product management or the organization is implementing product management as a competitive advantage and differentiating capability, we get to the functional excellence part of it. So that's the maturity model for product managers, or product management, rather. So we are looking at measuring success. There's a definition of success, but also it's important to measure success. Market-driven innovation is important. And everything has to begin and end with a customer who uses the technology, buy the technology, build the technology, and sell the technology. For us, even people who sell and build the technology, internal, for us as product managers, those are customers too, right? And so we are focusing on time to market, acceleration of time to revenue, time to value to the customer, and time to profit. And ultimately is really using and leveraging the product management best practices, the right tools, the right process integration, the right strategy and discipline execution to get that done on time. And being able to also say no to good products, to get great products done instead. So that means closing underperforming businesses. This is actually the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. You know why? Why are people very hesitant to close or end of life a product? Anyone? You can shout out. Why do you see pushbacks when you say, this is not performing, we're pouring money into this product, and it's not making any money? Emotional attachments, thank you, exactly. It's my baby, right? It's people are attached to their products. And it's really called the sunk cost, right? The sunk cost syndrome is that basically saying, I built this product. I already spent $10 million building this thing. I'm already here. It can't go back. I better finish, continue to invest in it. And it's a trap. You've got to, at some point, say enough is enough. And when we say, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging, right? So, all right. So how many of you are familiar with a pragmatic framework? How many took it? A few of you, a lot of you actually. Yes, so for those of you who have not seen it, pragmatic marketing is basically a framework, right? Everyone should take it. I really encourage everyone to take it because this is basically a foundational knowledge for product managers. And so what Pragmatic is saying is that product managers do their work on a continuum from the strategy to the execution level. So that's what I said before. And it's really three breeds or three functions, three roles of product managers. The one is the strategic product manager, the person who listens to the market, understand the customer pain points, right? The second breed of product managers is the technical product manager, known widely among the safe and scaled agile as the product owner, the person who does the requirements, technical aspects, roadmap, right? And finally, the third of that triad is the marketing product manager, or the outbound product manager, the person who talks to the market. And so what we learned from this is that we need 3 types of product managers, 3 roles. Those are distinctive roles. They overlap significantly, but nonetheless, they are distinctive. And as any framework, there is no framework better than other frameworks. There's no such thing, right? What the key thing here is that a framework is successful or as successful as our ability to successfully implement it. Otherwise, what happens when we introduce the best framework in our organization? What happens? Distraction, right? People are using different lingos, different languages, different artifacts, different processes. It adds more complexity to an already complex environment. So key thing here, the key take point here is actually consistency of application and implementation. Okay, so this is basically the product management transformation functional excellence program that we created, and it has 2 elements: mechanisms of engagement and roles of engagement. Roles of engagement has role definition, defining statement of works for all 3 aspects. We'll talk about those in a second. Skill set assessment and product management capability. Noah yesterday was talking about the main stage was talking about the human capital, right? We'll talk about this, and then the social capital of product management. Core competencies and curriculum for product management. I'll talk about this in a second. And strategy alignment, but then the mechanism of engagement, we need process integration, discipline execution, and finally getting to value, the perceived value, the customer's perceived value. We can say this is great for you, Mr. Customer. We see it as valuable, but the customer has to see it as valuable from their standpoint. It's a perceived value, right? Okay, the first element is, why do we define roles? Someone said, well, it doesn't matter if we define our roles and responsibility as long as we get things done. Great, that's small organizations, good. Large organizations, it's really, 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 really difficult, because if you don't define what each person does, people will clash. People will be doing different things. There will be a redundancy of efforts. There will be do-overs, reworks, a bunch of other things. And why that is because of something called social learning. There's also another problem, social learning trap, the elevator conformity. People like to conform. When you come to an organization, even if you're a great product manager, sooner or later, you're going to be enculturated in the DNA of that organization, whether good or bad. So this is why we need consistent role definitions. And we need to do that very well in large organization because of that, okay? So we learned that product managers have 3 roles: product line manager, technical product manager, product owner, and product marketing manager. And what happens when we, in large organizations, even small organizations, we ask too much of the product manager. We ask them actually to do all of these 3 aspects: the strategy, the marketing, and the technical aspect. We expect them to know all of that. And what happens when we overload people? Human nature, they gravitate towards their comfort zone, where they came from. If they're technology people, they gravitate towards doing roadmaps. If they're coming from the marketing, they gravitate towards that, right? And so we need to be very, very careful. And what we're trying to create here are choice architects, people who can actually generate multiple choices and pick the right decision or the best choice out of them. So we also created this second element, which is create a product management core curriculum. It's really a tiered approach to product management. And the human capital that Noah talked about, right? So we have the foundational knowledge, which is the first belt, the blue belt. And it has, we mandated basically Pragmatic and Business Model Inc., Business Model Canvas. This is the foundational knowledge. Then the Product Management Functional Excellence Program, which is the community of practice workshops that happens twice a year. We bring everybody together for 2 days, and we share experiences. And the third level is leadership and soft skills, functional skills, and then product management special topics. What we're trying to build here is not product experts, but market experts, okay? And therefore, we can combine both the build level, the competency level, with level or years of experience to climb that spectrum, that triangle. But we wanted to identify and assess our current situation, where we want to be in the future, and how to get there, to identify the gaps. So once people took the foundation and knowledge, understood, now we use that as a framework to evaluate them, to ask them, what are they good at now? This is the survey topic. So we surveyed them. So they took the foundational training. We did this assessment rollout, and then we asked them to evaluate themselves. We didn't ask them this, what would make you successful in what you're doing today to accomplish your statement of work, but we also told them, or asked them, to tell us what they're most passionate about in the next 5 years. Most people leave organizations after they're trained because they're not happy with their current statement of work. But we wanted to make sure that they're successful today with an eye on what makes them stay in the future. So we have career development plan, career trajectory for them to keep them within the organization. Okay, so in terms of strategy, we wanted to enable our customers, but first and foremost, we wanted to leverage our strengths. Large organizations are good. Large organizations got here because they're excellent in doing certain things, right? So we don't want to forget that, right? And so in terms of strategy, I can go through this, but I'm not going to. It's a lot. So let's leave it at this. Is our implementation framework, and as I said, it has to be consistent, right? The first thing that I want to say here is that we have to have a focus and a finish line that everybody knows. If you ask anyone within your organization, what is the most important goal for me and my organization, and you get different answers, you've got a problem. If everyone is not marching towards the same finish line, you've got a problem. Imagine, and I want you to have this mental image, you're bowling through a curtain. You're not seeing the target. There's no visibility into the target. There's no scoreboard. You don't know if you're winning or losing. What happens? People disengage very quickly. They get disincentivized and disengaged. Okay? Another thing is understanding the customer. Who is the customer, right? We need to be maniacally focused on the customer, okay? We need to have a maniacal focus on our customers. Understanding who the buyers are, who the users are, the influencers, and what they want. And the trap that a lot of product managers fall into is when they hear something from a customer, a request, great, that's a need, let's build it. They forget that those are not needs, those are requests. We need to ask the 3 whys, get to the story behind the story. Why do you need this, Mr. Customer, right? This is a good example. People don't want 1/4 inch drills. They want 1/4 inch holes, right? That's the real need. We need to understand how their incentives, how they're incentivized, how they compensated, what motivates them, their workflows, their challenges, right? And that's how you see a lot of these organizations that I've listed here, like McDonald's, for example. McDonald's is the largest toy distribution company in the world, but their business is fast food. Did you know that? Okay, another irony. I don't know if they're ironies or something interesting happening here. These guys understood very well their customers, okay? Uber, they're the largest taxi company. They own no taxis. Facebook is the world's most popular media owner, but they own no content. They don't generate any content, right? Another example, Airbnb is the world's largest accommodation provider, and they own no real estate. Those are not anomalies or weird things happening. These people understood, these companies understood their customers very, very well, okay? A really good example is the iPod, right? Remember the iPod? Look at the very left, storage for 1 GB of MP3. Or what they said, 1,000 songs in your pocket. That's the real value. The request that you get is from the customer, I need 1 GB of MP3, right? You need to question that. Why do you need it, right? It's very, very critical to understand and differentiate between requests and need, value, utility that the customer can actually gain out of that solution. And so this is how we manage to combine a lot of these processes. Agile, safe, agile, or scaled agile, excuse me, safe, and pragmatic. The good news is that those frameworks are not antithetical. They work very well with each other. We just need to know when to use what, right? For safe or scaled agile, most people start throwing requirements on the roadmap. And what they don't realize is that that requirement or that feature has to map out to one of those personas at the top, whether it's a user, whether it's a buyer, whether it's an influencer, what their problem statement is, what is their workflow, what are their deliverables. And when I say workflow, what is the workflow convergence between the user and the buyer? So when we offer something to the user and the user is ready to use it, the buyer also agrees with that and confirms that yes, we can buy it. So that's really the conversion points or points of convergence between them. But the top part of it is the who, the customer, what they want and why they want it. This is really building the right thing. The bottom part is how and when we can deliver it. It's execution, roadmaps. It's building it right and building it fast, right? So when you see a requirement or a feature that is not mapping out to one of these personas, what happens? What does that mean? It's one of two things. That this feature does not belong to your product, or you're simply missing a persona, right? Okay, moving on. I hear this a lot, and you'll hear it a lot. But you know, that's the way we have always done it. Again, the great versus the good, right? And the most commonly used letter, or one of them, in English language is the letter A, right? And the weakest letter, the weakest finger in your hands is the left pinky, right? Why is it placed, that letter, to be struck by the weakest finger? Anybody knows? Well, I'll tell you. Huh? Excellent, excellent. Typewriters. The original design of the typewriter had that. But they had it because they had a problem. The very first typewriter had the letter A placed to be struck by this, the index. So people got so quick in typing that the typewriter started to jam. So to slow that, they place it in this awkward position so it can be struck by this finger, with the pinky, so they can slow the typers down. So they don't have this problem of jamming. So the question is, why are we using a design for the electronic keyboard to solve a problem that we don't have? We have an explanation. It's called scotomas. Another example. Anybody know what this is? Black box. Am I blind? Is this black? Why do we call it black? Anybody? Original color was black, by the way. But it was hard to spot in areas where it ends up with, right? So they changed it to this obnoxious color. And by the way, somebody has a sense of humor. I said, do not open. But why did the naming convention stuck with it? We still call it black box. Again, for the same reason. It's a mental psychological condition. It's called scotomas. And it's a mental situation in which a person locks onto one idea at the expense of all others, right? And we have a lot of business scotomas in our business. And we need to peel away these scotomas so innovation and transformation can happen, right? Thank you.